The civil society is picking up. It starts with the youth. It starts with the kids, with the millennials and Generation Z. They know about it. They care about the planet. They care about the resources. And that's good. They are challenging the status quo, our future leaders.
The new generation cares about social reasons. They care about stakeholder capitalism, right? Like, we care about where things come from and how they're made, and if the companies are causing a positive impact in the world, and if they are not, and even if they are neutral, they won't have the preference of the consumers.
I think a more innovative youth, people being able to take more advantage, building more sustainable businesses, and being more responsible for the environment, perhaps something that the older generation didn't do enough of. But innovation is going to be a key driver and really taking opportunities, and there are a lot of opportunities around sustainability that the youth can actually take advantage of.
You're never too young to lead, and you're never too old to learn. And I'm highly inspired by the next generation who is leading now, who is positive and believes that every action counts.
We're very fortunate to have very well-educated young people in the country who are very passionate and committed to improving the livelihoods of people and neighbors around them, including themselves. Various challenges they face include, first of all, information, being able to know where they can take innovations, what is required in the market. They have various initiatives that they've been working on as youth. But what we have done as government is we have created what is called the Huduma White Box, where the youth can come and bring in their ideas, and we will then give them guidance so that they can be able to take those ideas to the next level. And they can actually get some seed capital, both from government as well as from private institutions that we're partnering with. And in conjunction with the UN, we have now an SDG Accelerator Lab, which has also multiple international companies and local companies that can provide also mentorship. As a country, we're not only a member of the African Union, which now created the Africa Free Trade Area, meaning we have a market access now of over 1.3 billion Africans. We've also been part of the Smart Africa Alliance. Over 30 countries have come together, and within that, each country has taken a specific role. And as we work together as one market and as one continent, then the youth are able to then not only reach out to others, they have a much bigger market, and they will be able to interact and be able to showcase their ideas. And this is already happening. We're very fortunate as Kenya to have a president that is so passionate about the youth. He's also the UN Global Youth Champion. He has appointed as assistant ministers over 7 young people. These are people aged below 35 that are seated at the table. In my ministry, I currently have 2, and they're involved in the policy making. They're involved in interacting also with the rest of the country in determining how we implement these policies and how we grow the country. The National Youth Council is a body that is constitutional. They have been set up so as to allow the youth themselves to build for themselves a regulatory environment where they get elected and are able to be involved in the policy and decision-making just as youth. The key thing is engaging them, finding ways of being able to interact and work with them. They give us a lot of information. We have seen that they can competently be able to not only build roads, they are now involved in the national hygiene, they're involved in education and training and many, many aspects. So we're very pleased as a country to have been seeing that development, and we are seeing that other countries will follow suit.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jatma Vikramanayaka. I'm the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. I work to bring the United Nations closer to young people and young people closer to the UN. So first of all, I want to thank the UN Global Compact for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to convene some inspiring young SDG innovators and practitioners from around the world for this discussion. I also want to thank Minister Joseph MUCHERU for his opening remarks, and it's truly great to see that member states are supporting young people in terms of innovation and recognizing young people as equal partners, not just beneficiaries, who must be engaging with both governments and private sector in order for all of us to achieve our ambitious 2030 Sustainable Development Goals on time. So today, this morning, for this panel, we have 5 brilliant young SDG innovators who are joining us to discuss their work, their challenges, their opportunities, but also their innovations for sustainable development goals here in the private sector space. So I want to give a very warm welcome to our panelists, RHIAN Louise from the UK, Jerome Sanders from the USA, MORENNO from Brazil, OGUZHAN CELEB from Turkey, and TSHEGOFATSO KOLE from South Africa. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm very sure that everyone is excited to jump into the discussion and hear from our inspiring young SDG innovators. But before we start, let's begin by hearing from Irene Cortez. Irene is one of the 2 innovators that will be sharing their thoughts on the challenges and barriers that young people face in driving innovation in SDGs in companies. Let's hear from Irene.
Hi, I'm Oliver.
Hello, I'm Irene. And I'm Sofia. Together we are glad to represent MOTANGIL in this program. One of the main barriers youth may face while attempting to create SDG-oriented initiatives is a lack of resources and communicative support. This gap is often due to corporate leaders' lack of information regarding the benefits that sustainable practices have on their markets. Despite companies having free access to materials illustrating principle-oriented policies and practices, in the real corporate world, leaders are not aware of the positive effect of becoming a principled business and developing sustainable solutions. In this context, innovative solutions from youth are not considered as viable. In order to promote this consideration, leaders should be aware of the impact on the success of their business that could be gained in the long run by aligning to the 10 principles of the Global Compact. In a post-COVID reality where limitations may have increased, our solution to eliminate this barrier involves encouragement through immediate actions on 2 corporate levels. First, leaders must identify young agents of change who promote the importance of viewing sustainability with a local lens. Creation of digital platforms that invite college students and trainees to collaborate on workshops and volunteer programs on the local level. Encouragement of the use of available and free communication tools such as webinars and interactive newsletters to promote sustainable practices and their possible impact. The first Young SDG Innovators immediate action is the creation of open constructive dialogues to promote and motivate colleagues to actively participate. The creation of camps and workshops that take place over 2 days annually, where each area of the corporation will analyze their policies and practices and develop a mid-term plan for the alignment with the 10 principles. Internal nomination of SDG leaders who will be in charge of the leadership and reporting of the programs being developed.
Thank you very much, Irene Cortez, and welcome to our very diverse, amazing panel of young SDG innovators. So, to begin our discussion today, let me bring an interesting point that Irene shared. Corporate leadership have access to information on sustainable practices, she said. For instance, through the 10 principles launched by the Global Compact, the United Nations is calling for companies to adopt sustainable practices and put human rights at center and frontier, not only upholding their basic responsibilities to the people and the planet, but also to set the stage for long-term business success. However, Irene also mentioned that despite having access to this information on sustainable businesses, business practices, corporate leadership still has lack of information regarding the benefits of implementing such practices within their own companies. In other words, can we say that perhaps corporate leadership is not actively listening to the obvious benefits of sustainability practices? Would you, my panelists, agree to that? And what do you think is the challenge that is keeping leadership away from listening? I would really like to hear from all of you on this question. And first, let me go to RHIAN.
Thank you. I think in terms of active listening, it's about the variety of different types of listening that we can have in this conversation. So something that I really liked about Irene's video was talking about different tech-led initiatives in order to involve more people in the conversation and in order to involve more young people in the conversation. That's something that I've looked at a lot in my work through, I'm a pro bono solicitor at Hogan Lovells, and we've been looking at ways in getting young people involved in the law by using things like comics and videos and things like that. So I think it's about having more conversations and more different types of active listening there.
Thank you very much, RHIAN. Jerome, what do you think about the question?
First and foremost, I think leadership is listening, right? It's no surprise that sustainability is the driving force for the future, with climate change, the pandemic that's happening, global inequalities. So absolutely, I think leadership is listening, but they're really looking to the youth to lean in and help them bridge that gap between, what are these goals and how do we make them real? So in the case of Irene and MORENNO, rather than just focusing on all of the 10 principles, I was just focusing on maybe one SDG that can align specifically to what the leadership team is trying to accomplish as a team. So as an example, imagine if MORENNO aligned with SDG number 9, which is all about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And so now they can get their leadership team very excited about that. And to your point about benefits and truly understanding what those are, maybe sharing a statistic like for every one job in manufacturing, it creates 2.2 jobs in other sectors. So helping them understand how that leadership team plays a bigger role in society beyond their own company's walls.
That sounds like a great recommendation. Let me come to MORENNO. MORENNO, what do you think from your experience? Are the leaders of corporate sector companies listening to these principles? Are they adopting the principles into their business models and the way they work?
To make them listen. So first of all, Irene, you are not alone. The lack of resources and communicative support and the need for raising awareness among corporate leaders are challenges faced by most companies, and it's not different from my experience. But trying to get one of the solutions that she brought, one of the most interesting solutions she shared with us is to invite college students and trainees to collaborate on workshops or volunteer programs on the local level. This kind of initiatives really can help the organization to connect to youth and seek different perspectives on SDG issues. Most of the solutions brought by Irene are related to change management process, addressing to the challenge of dissemination of information about SDGs through communication tools. I think this is an initial and necessary effort in order to raise awareness, but it's not enough to effectively engage the organization, especially the top management, the leaders. So I missed an approach focused on top management on her experience. At Caixa, we've been through a lot of initiatives to encourage innovative solutions, but we always stopped at the lack of top management support. We tried to solve that by nominating, godparents for the projects, but it was still not effective. So we decided to dedicate more energy and time to reach top management. And that really works. We have to improve the dialogue with top management. So if you want to encourage youth leadership and innovation for the SDGs, I think you must seek for top management support. Otherwise, you will frustrate young people and drive them away from the organization.
Thank you very much, Moreno, for that very practical experience that you shared through your company as well. Ozan, CELEB, and JEROME, KOLE, please feel free to answer the same question. But now that our three speakers have brought so many practical lenses to this conversation, I also want to encourage both Ozan and JEROME to also bring in examples and experiences from your work in your companies into the challenges that Irene listed in her video, particularly challenges when it comes to communicating sustainability inside the organization to the top of the organization, but also challenges when it comes to resources and access sometimes you may face merely because of being young innovators who are in the sort of not so much in the decision-making spheres of when it comes to these type of global policies. So Ozan, floor is yours.
Thank you. When I get the word from Moreno, if we mention about lack of resources and communication support, we can look a little bit different perspective too, like innovation perspective, because beyond the scope of the SDGs, all businesses, business models, products, or created things have to evaluate according to let's say lean startup or agile approach to when we look at the resources, we can have lots of different source, but we generally think how can we lose a little bit less due to lack of resources. In that point of view, we can say that we have to look a little bit like startup or something like that. Otherwise, when we look to Young SDGs, Young SDG Innovators actually, those are really hard to express themselves and reach the outside of the company. If we need to align all SDG with all our processes, we have to do that. And previously, generally organizations believe that everything could, even should, be done entirely in-house. In today's world, finally organizations have started to realize that we don't need to every resources, competencies, product inside of the companies. While doing projects or researching things, we could need and we can reach the outside of the company. We known as open innovation actually, in general speaking. There have come to be all manner of crowdsourcing campaigns, tournaments or hackathons. We and our company try to reach with this kind of ways to reach the crowd and try to optimize the effort and this kind of works in the same basket, let's say. With all of this, we can able to reach our goal to 2030 with whole nation, let's say.
Thank you very much, Ozan. JEROME.
To the point that Irene mentioned in her video, sustainability is meeting our own needs without compromising the needs of future generations. And we are living in times where sustainability and innovation is to be embedded in the culture of our organizations. And the only way to have that is if we have the commitment from the top leadership. once you've got the top leadership fully bought into sustainability, all the solutions on the table can be viable. When she mentioned leadership identifying agents of change, I want to change that narrative to say, us as young people, identify ourselves as those agents of change, and we can approach leadership in talking and engaging and practically showing them how we can be the drivers of this change. I'll give you an example. In South Africa, we launched the De Beers Youth Forum. At first, we were seen as very radical, but the leadership was willing to listen. And we said to the leadership, we've got HIV and AIDS as a battle in this country. Yes, the work has been done and organizations have done the best that they can to a point in time. But we as young people have identified that our workforce is a bit complacent. Allow us to re-energize the workforce, allow us to re-energize the company, and we can own the HIV and AIDS campaign. And we launched a hashtag No Shame as the young people. So I believe the leaders are listening. They also require us to come to them to say, we are willing to take this a step further.
Thank you very much, CEGOFATSO. So I see all the panelists nodding heavily at what you were saying. So I understand there is agreement in the panel about the point you made about not being passive, but being active and proactive rather in actually finding solutions to the issues that not just your company, but your community and country are facing. So the next question, I want to give each one of you 2 minutes or a little under 2 minutes. Based on your experience, what would you advise innovators like Irene and her team in terms of implementing the solutions they found? Is there a specific engagement strategy that you recommend that they should adopt when it comes to engaging their company's leadership, but also their peers who work in the companies to adopt sustainability as a practice to their business model? Let me first go to RHIAN.
I think in terms of engaging peers and also in terms of engaging the leadership, something that I think all of us have touched on today has been about trying to give that agency and trying to give that accountability for the SDGs to individuals rather than it being solely with leadership or solely with one team who have the responsibility for impact on the SDGs. I think as soon as you are able to have an innovation idea that incorporates everyone and makes individuals the agents of change, then you are able to move away from the SDGs being a separate thing that benefit an organization to being core business. And in terms of how you get people involved in that, you have to empower everyone throughout your organization. I don't think it's enough to work in silos to say that only one team has responsibility for the SDGs. It has to be much, much wider than that.
Thank you very much, RHIAN. Jerome, over to you.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. I think that first and foremost, it's important for the young SDG innovators or anyone who's promoting sustainability within an organization to fundamentally fall in love with the problem. I think all too often our leadership, the innovators, disruptors, the immediate reaction is to jump to a solution, right? What is the quick solution that will solve the most problems? But I think part of the strategy that our peers and our leaders have to embody is this whole notion of let's fall in love with the problem. And I'll give you an example. So for us at Cisco, the Young SDG Innovators, we fundamentally looked at what is Cisco uniquely positioned to solve in the world that no other company in the world is positioned to do. And through our analysis and research, we found that Cisco represents almost 70% of the world's internet access, right? And for most of us, the whole digital divide is no surprise. We've heard about it. There's about 4 billion people that are disconnected from the internet today. So we started to ask ourselves the question, well, why? Why is that happening? Why aren't there more people that are connected? And oh, by the way, now with the pandemic, we see that need for internet connectivity is becoming a basic human need. So in short, over the last year, we've looked at how do we provide global affordable internet access to underserved countries, and how can we use our resources for good, not necessarily just for profitability, but to fundamentally help communities, help our local communities, help the world at large. And so in short, again, the strategy is not so much about the solution, the end state, falling in love with that problem up front and getting other people around you, whether it's your peers or leadership teams, to fall in love with that problem too.
Thank you very much, Jerome. Falling in love with the problem sounds like a great way to start finding solutions, and I love the way you framed it. Moreno, let me come to you. What advice do you have for Irene and young innovators like her?
Yeah, there is not much to say. I think Jerome and RHIAN told everything, but I would try to share my experience. I work from the Sustainability and Environmental and Social Responsibility Department at KAIXA. And historically, we used to work isolated from the other departments. We used to dream that we would solve all the environmental and social problems of the company. So we realized that everybody in the company likes to talk about sustainability. It's a very positive agenda. So what would we adjust the speech to engage those areas, those other departments? So we started to show how sustainability can add value to their process, to their products and services, to their businesses. And that worked. We tried to understand the product first, and then we tried to connect that product, that challenge to sustainability agenda. And so I would say to Irene that she tried to engage all departments and try to understand what impacts the products of the other departments has on the environmental and society, and try to build some solutions together. I think this is very engaging attitude.
Thank you very much, Moreno. OGUZHAN.
Yes, like said that Moreno, Jerome said all of things we can even imagine. So if I had to a little bit more, I can look like that. If we want to achieve something, you have to look the real problem. Like Jerome said that if you love your solution, you probably will go a little bit mistake side. So when we look at the achieving things, it's really good to look the problem itself. If you do that really properly, we can do whatever we want. So if we mention about the examples, I can give one too. As the program, we had tried to focus on the consolidate the efforts of the SDG works, let's say. We are working on a project that we can have worldwide impact as the Young SDG Innovators. Let's say briefly, the project is a platform that enables the sharing experience between NGOs and corporate companies. If this can be achieved, you can do whatever you want with that. Otherwise, you have to look the small area of the working processes. So when we look at the main problem, like we already looked at it, we can achieve the all nice things to done, and we can find the future wanted world together. let's say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, OGUZHAN. So it's not easy being the last speaker because I'm sure many of the things on the topic is already being said, but looking at your amazing profile and the work you have done, I'm very sure that you have something to add to this conversation.
I think what I'd like to just say to my young colleagues, we need to be brave and courageous. It starts with you inward to say, this is really the difference that I want to make. And in our organizations, if we really look hard, we've got like-minded people, and it's about finding those individuals. And as a collective, we slowly build a conversation. It's not about one person fighting the problem. It's about coming together as a team to say, how can we drive a different conversation? And we are the young people who've got social media at our hands. Why don't we take that skill and show the organization that there can be conversations that we can drive through social media in a positive way? So we as young people can drive that conversation and drive that energy amongst ourselves before we even get to the leadership, because it's really a collective. It's really about team effort. And it's, to what Jerome said, fall in love with the problem. But I want to say fall in love with the bigger picture. It's about sustainability. Make sure that we are all aligned to sustainability.
Thank you very much, CELEB. And everyone, what a great first round of discussion. And we're not even done yet. You know, I asked for your advice, but I'm going to come back to you for more. But before that, let's hear from another Young SDG pioneer, Mashuk Chowdhury, from his video.
Hello, I'm Mashuk Chowdhury. I manage sustainability in the E.G.H Group. I was also one of the UN Global Compact 2019 Young SDG Pioneers, and that is the greatest motivation in my career so far. One of the biggest barriers of involving the youth is the mindset of the top management. Commitment, communication, and collaboration are very important. The top management needs to be committed with the SDGs, and they need to cascade it down throughout the hierarchy to all departments and individuals. Once this is done, we will have the youth not just as participants, but rather as leaders in driving the SDGs throughout the organization. Local networks play a big role with collaboration and communication. Programs such as the Target Gender Equality, Young SDG Innovators program, and for that matter, the SDG Pioneers Recognition program, act as great motivation factors. As these programs are targeting more youth, organizations and top management will be pushing forward their youth people. And it's always a prestige for organizations to be working with UN organizations. Regarding the impact, I can share my own experience. Last year's SDG Pioneers program was targeting the youth. I was nominated by my top management to participate in the local level competition. When I became the champion from Bangladesh, I entered the global round. And on 25th September 2019, I was in the UN headquarters in New York, collecting my crest and speaking as one of the 10 global winners. Yes, I was speaking in the United Nations. My career took a 180. Now I'm involved with programs which is promoting the youth within my organizations. I was in the champion role of the YC program, and I am currently in the ambassador role of Target Gender Equality. The impact is youth leadership with the SDGs. As we are involving ourselves with SDG programs, these are motivations not just for individuals, but for the organizations and the top management. Aligning business with the SDGs is clearly a business case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a really eloquent presentation from Mashuk. And some challenges, I think also Irene mentioned, but also really great to see some concrete examples of how his personal story, but also the story of the company gradually changes once you have access to platforms like the Young SDGs Pioneers. So once again, communication with top management continues to be one of the barriers that young innovators, including Mashuk, has faced, like Irene. And I want to ask you, as young SDG innovators in your company, how did you overcome this challenge? Many of you spoke about how, I loved it when CELEB said, you know, you have to find like-minded people. You need to, it's not just one people fighting against or riding against the wave, but, you know, building coalitions and heading those challenges head on, accepting those challenges head on. But I want to specifically focus also on the challenges that young women particularly face in organizations, because we all know that it's not a level playing field for young women and women in most places. And for both RHIAN and CELEB, do you think young female innovators face additional barriers, as there is often a very sort of masculinity bias in the corporate world, at least from what we have seen from outside of that world? And if so, how did you overcome them? Let me go to CELEB first.
As a female, I'm a female in a very male-dominated industry. Mining is a male-dominated industry. And there are challenges because your capabilities are questioned. But what I've realized in overcoming them, it wasn't a female fighting a female's battle. It was the men fighting the female battle. I'm proud to wear my he for she pin, because as an organization, we are standing for women and girls, and not just standing, but resourcing for that and actively making sure that our young women and girls have the voice. So it is easier to be in an organization that fully values inclusion and diversity to its true definition. And the barriers are easier because it's not females who are fighting for females to be at the table, but it's for the males who are saying, we want to hear what these females are saying. And that is how it has become a very easy barrier to overcome.
Thank you. RHIAN, what has your experience been?
Thank you. I think I'd like to second what TSHEGOFATSO has said in terms of at my company too, we have really pioneered certainly pro bono work in relation to women and girls and championing their rights. And I think that that's incredibly important. I'm also part of several networks, including the 50/50 network, as well as mentoring opportunities that I think are really very important in terms of championing women's voices and all genders' voices, actually.
Thank you very much. I want to go to, let's go to Jerome next. How did you break this barrier when it comes to communicating with the leadership of your organization? And being 3 young men, I would also like to ask, how could young men be allies of young women who are trying to bring through change, particularly regards to gender-based discrimination or gender-based barriers in the workplace? How can you support them? How can you be allies?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I think there's 3 things. When communicating with leadership, number 1, I think having an executive sponsor, so someone who fundamentally can be the liaison between your young innovators and the leadership team helps. I think it adds credibility, it adds a level of seniority and expertise, and in some cases, which leads to my second point, it helps us speak the leadership team's language. Right? A lot of times we'll come with ideas that make sense to us. We can say, hey, we want you to align with SDG number 17, partnerships. And the leader's like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? So having someone that can help you translate and speak that leadership levels language, that definitely helps. And then also finding other champions within the organization. I don't think it always has to look like a senior leader. As many of the other young innovators on the panels discussed, find those people that are passionate, those people who are willing to almost make this their day job to be a part of the change that our organizations have to see. And to your last question about being an ally for gender equality, I don't think there's one program or one instance where that has to happen. It has to be an ongoing discussion. It has to show up in our meetings every day. When we hear a colleague whose voice is not being heard, they already have their voice, but continuing to empower them and to give them share that platform with them in the case where if you have a colleague and they have a brilliant idea that needs to be heard, continue to champion for that. Or if there's opportunities, for example, like this, to speak on a platform, sharing that platform with someone else. So again, I don't think that it's just one instance or one thing that can help women continue to empower them for gender equality. I think that it's an ongoing conversation, ongoing actions, and it's something that can be done every single day.
Yes, it's certainly a way of life. So very glad to see so many Hitoshis on our panel today. Moreno, let me come to you. How did you break this communications barrier with the different tiers of your organization?
Yeah, I think I go in line with Jerome. I'm your fan, Jerome. Everything you say, I agree. Just kidding. In my opinion, Mashuk went straight to the point because first we have to work hard on top management mindset. Despite not having shared how to achieve top management support, he highlighted the importance of making partnerships and how local networks programs focused on the youth can motivate them to actively participate in the SDGs agenda. He ended his speech by stating that aligning business with the SDGs is clearly a business case. So to talk to top management and to leadership, I think this is the key to engage them. Business leaders must recognize SDG challenges as market opportunities. And they need young people to show them how to seize these opportunities and how to solve global problems with business models. I think unless you can demonstrate that an idea is capable of generating revenue, more revenue than expenses, and for me that work in a bank, it's very important to be risk adjusted the return. You will never get off the ground, even if it delivers positive impact. So we have to connect sustainable agenda to the business agenda. At Caixa, my CEO, Pedro Guimarães, calls this premise like a math-based bank. So we have to do the math. If it gets some more revenue than expenses and you deliver positive impact, it's okay. They will listen to you.
Thank you very much, Moreno. Ozan, over to you.
If we are talking about the barrier like that, the barrier reason is directly strategy and values of the company. If we need to align with SDGs in all over the company, there is no way the top management does not have support. Nobody can do without it, of course. So like Jerome said, if you find a sponsor about your idea or project or whatever you work on it, you are really lucky. I'm lucky thanks to my company in this regard, because all top management is really open to that idea. So our challenge barrier is a little bit low, I can say that. But all strategic perspective are evaluated together with the SDG in our company. So I'm really happy about it. And this point of view is always taken into consideration while working. When you look at the SDGs and combine with your works and to-dos, with consultancy, mentoring, or and etc. After that, you can able to move on with your idea to achieve your goal. Otherwise, if you can't reach the opportunity to express your idea or explain your idea, there is no possible to reach the SDG goals, let's say.
Missions. Yes, thank you very much, Ozan. Sadly, we have come to the end of our panel discussion, and I have one last question for all of you. So in my experience working for the UN, trying to bring youth into all the conversations that we have across organization, I often hear from leaders, mostly from government leaders, we know that engaging young people is important and sustainability is important, but we don't know how to do that. And this is a very common question. And sometimes I'm surprised, like, oh, you have 30 years, 40 years experience, but you don't know how to do that. So I think we shouldn't give them an excuse as young people. So I want every one of you to bring a very concrete example, a very concrete good practice from your company, from your organization, from your community that you can share as a best practice that others who say, we don't know how to do it, perhaps could learn from you. So let me first go to RHIAN. Please do share a concrete good practice or an example from your work that others could learn from.
Thank you. I think that it is about creating that reach and being able to be as inclusive as possible when you're reaching those young people. So from a legal perspective, that's been about trying to break down access to justice for young people and doing it in interesting ways that aren't the ways you might potentially think about a lawyer talking to someone about the law. They are things like having comics. That I think that's something that really will inspire young people and bring them on board with what their rights are, and that goes to SDG 16 and the rule of law. But also in terms of other examples that Hogan Lovells have got involved with, we've really tried to get involved with more tech-based innovations. So, for example, the Chancery Lane project, which is a legal hackathon. Now, Ozan mentioned hackathons earlier, but I think that they're a really excellent example of having that reach, being able to talk to young people, get their ideas in a very quick space of time and in a way that's very dynamic. So Chancery Lane project is an example of lawyers, barristers, law students coming together and thinking about how to rewire contracts and how to rewire laws in order to fight climate change. And I think that's a really interesting way of getting young people and all people on board.
Thank you very much, RHIAN. That certainly is a very concrete example. Let me go to TSHEGOFATSO, but I just want to alert all of you, we have about 1.5 minutes each per person, so please try to stick to your time so we can have everyone share one example from their work. TSHEGOFATSO, over to you.
I think what's important is we needed a leadership that's deliberate in action. That's the first foundation for us to be able to communicate. But one example that De Beers launched last year is a reciprocal mentorship program where a senior leadership was paired with someone younger in the organization, and those conversations started. Sometimes leadership, when they look at all young people in one room, they feel a bit anxious because they're like, oh, all these young people are wanting to speak to us. We're not sure how we're going to listen. But let's bite this elephant bit by bit. Let's break these groups into smaller, manageable sizes. And as a CEO, identify a young person that you want to engage with. As a CFO, identify a young person. And as we have those individual conversations, the collective message will be heard.
Thank you very much. That is yet another concrete example. Jerome, what examples will you have from your work for us?
Absolutely. I like what KOFATSO said in terms of leadership being deliberate in action. I think that perfectly describes what needs to be done at the leadership level. And specifically, as an example, Cisco has set out a goal to impact 1 billion lives by 2025. And if we've learned anything through this program, SDG 17 is one of my favorite SDGs, so the power of partnerships. This whole idea that it's not just about one company or nonprofits or governments coming together to create a solution, but this idea that nothing is done alone, right? So in this goal that Cisco has with impacting 1 billion lives, we've partnered with Global Citizens, which has helped us scale and amplify our ability to make an impact in the world. And we've activated over 75,000 employees to give back to our respective communities. So in short, really taking action, setting a tangible goal that people can align with and get excited about.
That's really great. And you are also talking not only about partnerships in the corporate sector, but through partnership with the global citizens, you have actually also made sort of a corporate and civil society or NGO, non-profit sector partnership there as well. And we're all working towards the same goal. That is really great. Moreno, over to you.
Thank you. One material example that we launched recently was innovation lab for employees, more focused on the young employees, to develop ideas on how Caixa, how the company would implement products and services that address solutions to environmental and social problems. And that was a very exciting experience, because we mobilized a lot of people in the company, and somehow we reached the young employees, because Caixa is a public bank, and we have more than 150 years, and we have a very massive amount of more older employees. So we are facing this challenge on how to connect the old to the young, and this experience helped us a lot to make this connection. I think we don't have a solution that was implemented yet, but even if we don't have this solution, the way the company was mobilized was very helpful to maintain these young talents in the company.
Thank you very much. Ozan, last but not least.
Yes. Like Moreno, I'm going to explain the same process to our company. Our company, Koç Holding, has an innovation program. Like Moreno said, that we are trying to reach the generally young people in our company to create ideas in lots of different ideas. Let's say if we are going to produce a car, we are producing, by the way, we are trying to CO2 emission aim. We are going to do lots of different projects and trying to decrease the consumption of the CO2 in our car that produce. Or we can look at our old dealerships and this kind of network, and we ask about the ideas about the environmental things and in this regard. So in this way and processes, try to get the idea to create more value in the environmental side or in our processes, actually. In just for a quick example, our company aimed to complete the use of all plastic within 2 years, for example. This kind of different complex projects is going through just the processes, and we are trying to test all of it and achieve at the end of the process. And with that, both for company and our world, we are trying to add value or let's say decrease our costs and effects of the bad effects of the world.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think it's very clear from our conversation today, when companies adopt sustainability into the core of the business model, it's a win-win for both the company and for the planet and for the people. So thank you so much for all your contributions. I wish we could have continued this all day. You guys are amazing. I could listen to you and your very practical experiences throughout the day, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. So I think just to summarize, we discussed how important it is to create an environment that supports and enables young innovators and new ideas that they bring into the companies, actively listening and meaningfully engaging with young innovators within a company, how important it is. You all brought up examples like hackathons, innovation labs, like town hall meetings, one-to-one meetings, lots of different strategies that we can adopt. Not working in silos, I think, is something that all of you talked about within your own companies, not the sustainability unit, not the CSR unit, but the whole company across departments, across offices, how important it is to be involved. I loved our conversation on gender equality, how all of you agreed that not just young women need to step up and break those barriers, but young men needs to be allies too, and they need to support and create and protect the environments to be conducive to young women, but also for people who do not necessarily identify themselves as the binary genders of men and women. Public-private partnerships and private non-profit partnerships you discussed, which I think is also a very important area for collaboration. And most importantly, you discussed how companies need to be champions when it comes to ensuring diversity and inclusivity, because diversity and inclusivity clearly drive innovation. So to support this, I think young change makers in a company should also take an active approach in leading, in creating that gap, and invest and time in building relationships, not just with senior managers, but finding those allies across the organization, across your peers, and sort of tackling these issues through a group of people who have that common ambition. So let me thank all of you for your time, for your contributions, for the amazing work that you do. And we've been talking today about the top leadership. So I hope that in a couple of years, not so long from now, I will be able to see you as those top managers. And when you become those top managers, you will listen to the young people in your companies and employ sustainability. Thank you so much for your time, and over to our moderator.
Thank you very much indeed, Jayathma. What a fantastic that discussion that was, to hear people really getting to grips with the agenda for young people and for the world in reaching the global goals. It's coming up to 9 a.m. in New York, and that means that it's almost time to take you to the UN General Assembly Hall. For the first time in its 75-year history, this year's UN General Assembly is happening almost entirely online, with very few diplomats in the chamber. But although we can't invite you to be here in New York in person, it doesn't stop us from bringing it to you right here on Uniting Business Live. We'll be able to cross to the UN General Assembly Hall in just a few moments. The session will be led by the new president of the General Assembly, Volkan Bozkır of Turkey, once they get underway. Just a reminder that you are watching United Business Live from the United Nations Global Compact in New York. You can follow all the action right here and on social media using the hashtag Uniting Business. I've just done a tweet myself to say what a thrill it is to be here and hosting this inaugural Global Impact Forum. Have a look also at our interactive event platform. It does have many exciting and innovative features that I encourage you to use. They include the event chat, which is located on the right side of your screen, where you can say hello to the other attendees and introduce yourselves. We've made it easy to connect with your fellow attendees. You can see them in the Attendee tab, also on the right side of your screen. All right, I understand that we are getting underway in the Assembly Hall. Live now to the United Nations General Assembly Hall and Volkan Bozkır of Turkey, the new president.